Since September 11, our nation has engaged in a policy of institutionalized racial and ethnic profiling. If Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, he would tell us we must not allow the horrific acts of terror our nation has endured to slowly and subversively destroy the foundation of our democracy, quoted by John Conyers. On September 11, 2001, there were a series of coordinated attacks by Al-Qaeda upon the United States of America. 19 members from Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 planes. 2 crashed into the Twin Towers in New York. Another crashed into the Pentagon. And the last one crashed near Pennsylvania, which was intended to attack Washington, D.C. None of the passengers from these commercial airlines survived. With nearly 3,000 dead and over 6,000 injured, America responds to the attack by launching the war on terrorism. Sequentially, America, along with other countries in the world, increased their airport security. Along with it came racial profiling. Racial profiling is the act of using ethnicity or race as a determining factor in decisions to stop and interrogate people who look more susceptible of doing a particular crime than other races. The ethical dilemma being presented is, should we incorporate racial profiling into airport security measures? In order to determine whether racial profiling should be permitted during security checkups at airports, we will use the Potter box. The Potter box, designed by Ralph P. Potter Jr., a professor of social ethics in Harvard, is used in order to help deal with ethical dilemmas. It is simplified into 4 quadrants. First is facts. The facts present all issues at hand and is the definition of the problem. Second comes values. In this quadrant, we compare the merits of different values that will influence decision-making. It allows the analyst to view in different perspectives. Third is principles. This is the stage of the box when we take ethical philosophies that can be applied to the situation. Lastly, is loyalties. Loyalties concerns who the decision-maker has allegiance to. Fact. Roughly 1/5 of the whole world is Muslim. Fact. Muslims are involved in 21 out of 25 global religious conflicts. Fact. There have been 14,879 acts of Islamic terrorism since 9/11 and still rising. Fact. Common suspects of terrorists are 20 to 30-year-old Middle Eastern Muslim males. Fact. Israel has introduced racial profiling, including a number of different security checkups, and has not had any major attacks for more than 3 decades. Fact. Although Israel practices racial profiling, their security is mostly due to the fact that they train their staff to read micro-expressions to tell if someone is suspicious or not, and use biometric scanning in cameras to find wanted people. Fact. On January 4, 2010, days after the Christmas Day attack, Transportation Security Administration ordered more strict security checks targeting people that are citizens of, or are flying through, or from nations with significant terrorist activity. These include Cuba, Sudan, Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, Algeria, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Nigeria, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Somalia and Yemen. Fact. Racial profiling has potential to branch off into hate crime and become a more serious concern. In some people, racial profiling is born from hatred of the specified race. Fact. There are plenty of laws around the world that looks down upon hate crime, and/or racial profiling. Fact. The Criminal Code of Canada states in Section 319 that, everyone who, by communicating statements in any public place, incites hatred against any identifiable group where such incitement is likely to lead to a breach of the peace is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years. Or an offense punishable on summary conviction. Fact. Racial profiling goes against what civil rights say about discrimination. Discrimination means the differential treatment of persons, however justifiable or unjustifiable the treatment may be. Fact. Al-Qaeda has recruited approximately 1,500 blonde-hair and blue-eyed Britons to cause havoc in the UK in the past. They are also training new fighters that look Western that could easily cross borders. Fact. It is not that hard to find hair dye and colored contacts to look more like a Westerner. Here are some values that concern racial profiling. The value of responsibility that airport security has to protect their passengers as securely as possible. The value of time not being wasted on 99.9% of the innocent passengers. The value of human and civil rights that argue against discrimination. The value of money and the cost it takes to train personnel to read expressions and to install new security devices as an alternative, or as a combined factor with racial profiling. The value of security of the passengers of mistakenly putting a terrorist on board because that person might be one of the Western-looking terrorists. The value of humiliation that the airport and the Transportation Security Administration has to face when they mistakenly profile a person wrongly or let a terrorist on board. To further examine this dilemma, we will be using Kant's categorical imperative, Agape principle, Aristotle's golden mean, and Mill's principle of utility. With Kant's categorical imperative, we must never do anything that can be considered as universal law. Racially profiling a certain race must then mean that we should profile every race, which thus goes back to scanning everyone. Not only must you racially profile at airports, you must racially profile everywhere else. This all only leads to hate crime and discrimination. The Agape principle states that we should treat people as ends and not as means to an end. This simply means that we should treat people for who they are as a person and not for how they will be useful to us. Racially profiling goes against this and treats certain races as an object of disgust and makes them seem that they are all guilty of a crime they might not have even imagined of doing. Aristotle's golden mean is the moderation between two extremes. On one side, there can be no racial profiling at all, which leads to faster security checkups but lesser security. On the opposite side, there can be extreme security with racial profiling, which leads to hours of waiting in the airport, but is more secure. In the middle is moderation of security with added profiling of citizens of countries from high terrorist activities, such as what the Transportation Security Administration implemented on January 4. Mill's principle of utility simply states, the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Seeing that only 1/5 of the world can be potentially mad about racial profiling on Muslims being suspected as terrorists, this means that 4/5 of the world will be happier that they won't be checked as much and that airport lineups will be faster. Furthermore, more people will be also happier that airports will be more secure because the suspected terrorists are the ones only being scanned thoroughly. The following are the loyalties that will help in making the right decision. Airports have loyalties to the passengers. They have the responsibility to keep all passengers safe and to transport them to their destinations. The airport has a loyalty to their reputation. If a terrorist were to bomb a specific aircraft company's name, chances are people will be too afraid of traveling under that company. Passengers have loyalties to other passengers. They must trust each other to not do stupid things. An example would be AirTran giving the privilege of a Muslim family to board a plane, until they started talking about the safest place to sit, which caused uproar thinking that they will hijack or plan an attack. Airports and security have loyalties to their passengers. They must respect passengers and must follow guidelines in order to avoid discrimination. Transportation security administrations have loyalties to the government and the laws they pass. Laws including the respecting of civilian rights and avoiding discrimination. After examining both sides of the argument of whether having racial profiling or not, we have concluded that airport security should not implement racial profiling into their security checkups. Racial profiling goes against the rights of the minority and could even bring out new troubles, such as the rise of radical Muslims. YouTube European radical Muslims to see how mad they can get over a cartoon. Imagine how mad they would get if they were denied on planes. The only way of this being acceptable is following up on Kant's categorical imperative, in which we must racially profile everyone. Meaning that we must scan everyone thoroughly for it to be acceptable.